My boy Ethan is 8. Bright-eyed, soft-spoken, with a curious little mind that always wants to understand how things work, how water flows uphill in pipes, why birds fly in a V-shape, or why the moon sometimes follows us home. That kind of child. Gentle. Quiet. Not the loudest in the room, but the one you notice when everything else falls still. For the past year, he'd been squinting a lot. Missed the baseball when it rolled his way. Started sitting closer to the TV. His teacher, Ms. Plimpton, kindly sent home a note after he began copying math problems off his neighbor's notebook. Not because he was cheating, but because the board was a blur. I wasn't surprised. Poor vision runs in our family. I had glasses by 11. My dad by 9. So I took him to the local optometrist, a cozy little place tucked behind the pharmacy on Willow Lane. Ethan was nervous, but the optometrist, a kind lady named Dr. Myers, made it fun. He held the big lens device like a spaceship's control panel, answering her, which is clearer, 1 or 2, like he was decoding secret alien transmissions. When we got his prescription, we took him straight to pick out his first pair. And let me tell you, this wasn't some routine errand. For Ethan, it was a ceremony. A rite of passage. He must have tried on 20 frames. Plastic ones, wire ones, black ones, blue ones, even a pair with lightning bolts on the arms. But the moment he slid on that pair with the soft green rims and slightly round lenses, something changed. He stood taller. Turned to me and grinned, not one of those big toothy grins, but the kind where a kid is holding in too much joy to smile wide. That kind. "I can see you better now," he said softly. That hit me hard. We walked out of that shop, and Ethan was seeing the world brand new. The texture of tree bark. The sparkle on a puddle. He kept pointing things out. "Dad, did you know the stop sign has bumps?" he asked, referring to the embossed letters. "And that bird up there, it has stripes on its wings." I hadn't seen him that excited in months. We stopped for ice cream afterward, just the two of us. He got rainbow sherbet with sprinkles. I got black coffee in a cone, don't ask. That day, he wore those glasses like a badge of honor. He felt different. Not like someone trying to fix a flaw, but like someone who had just unlocked a new power. The world made sense again. And he was proud. We walked home down our neighborhood cul-de-sac. The kind with neatly trimmed lawns, carefully parked sedans, and a homeowners association that treats mailbox paint like a matter of national security. But on that day, none of that bothered me. Not the plastic smiles. Not the side glances from folks peeking through curtains. My boy was walking beside me, head held high, seeing the world in color again. The first person we ran into was Mrs. Granger, our next-door neighbor. She's one of those women who always has something to say and nothing kind to say it with. She wears perfume you can smell from 3 driveways away, and she's been on the HOA board longer than I've lived in the neighborhood. She looked down at Ethan, squinted at his face, and then chuckled under her breath. "Oh my," she said, one hand on her hip. "Those glasses make your face look unique." Ethan looked up at me, unsure. I just smiled and nodded at him like it was no big deal. But my ears burned. Then came the kicker. "Looks a little weird, don't you think?" she added, turning to me like it was some sort of joke we were sharing. "Poor thing. Hope he grows into them." I didn't say anything. Not then. I just walked away with Ethan. He was quiet after that. Didn't say a word during dinner. Didn't bring up the stop sign, or the bird wings, or the puddle sparkles. That spark from earlier, it dimmed. And I couldn't stand it. Later that night, I found him sitting on the floor in his room, glasses in his lap, fiddling with the frames. His eyes looked glassier than the lenses. "Are they too weird, Dad?" he asked. That question hurt more than I can explain. I sat down beside him. Told him the truth. That the people who make fun of others usually do it because they're small inside. That glasses don't make him weird. They make him stronger. Smarter. Braver. But I could still see it in his eyes. He'd heard the word weird, and it had stuck. No matter how many times I told him otherwise, something in him had curled up a little, like a flower pulling back in the cold. That night, I made a quiet promise to myself. This neighborhood, this HOA, they may be able to enforce rules about grass height and mailbox color, but they don't get to tell my kid how to feel about himself. They don't get to decide what's normal or weird. And they sure as hell don't get to break a kid's confidence for the sake of their shallow suburban bubble. Ethan didn't deserve to be embarrassed for needing to see clearly. He deserved to be celebrated for being curious, kind, and brave enough to walk proud in new glasses even after being mocked. That was the moment everything changed. I knew I had to do something, not just for Ethan, but for every kid who's ever been made to feel like they didn't belong in their own neighborhood. Because when you're a parent, there are moments that define you, not in what you say, but in what you do. And I was just getting started. The morning after Ethan got his glasses, he wore them to school without hesitation. I watched him board the yellow bus from the end of our driveway, his little green frames slightly sliding down his nose, his backpack bouncing as he climbed the step. He gave me a quick wave, the same one he's given me since kindergarten, 3 quick fingers up, like a silent, "I love you." I waved back and stayed there for a moment, proud. But later that afternoon, the storm clouds rolled in, and I don't mean the weather. It was around 4 p.m. when I heard the knock. Sharp. Purposeful. The kind of knock that says, "I don't have time for nonsense." I dried my hands and opened the door to find Karen Lancaster standing on my porch. Karen, head of the HOA board, self-proclaimed guardian of community standards, and the human equivalent of a cold, unbuttered piece of toast. Her blonde bob was perfect, her lipstick immaculately drawn, and her nails bright red and dangerously pointed, like talons. She didn't smile. She never did. "Mr. Thomas," she said, arms crossed like a vice grip. "Do you have a moment to talk?" I nodded, keeping my voice polite. "Of course, Karen. What's going on?" She stepped inside without waiting for permission. That's how she operated. Like she owned every square inch of the neighborhood. Your lawn, your porch, even your thoughts if you weren't careful. "I was on my walk this morning and saw your son at the bus stop," she began, as if the image itself had been offensive. "Is everything all right?" I blinked. "Yeah, he got glasses." Karen tilted her head, eyes narrowing. "Yes, I noticed. Very bold choice. They're certainly noticeable. They help him see," I said plainly. She forced a chuckle that had all the warmth of a dentist's drill. "Well, of course. It's just that some of the neighbors have voiced concerns." "Concerns?" "Yes. About how the children present themselves. We like to maintain a certain aesthetic in this community. Standards. I'm sure you understand. It's not personal." I took a deep breath, choosing silence over the 100 things I wanted to say. But she wasn't done. Children with unusual accessories can be distracting. They stand out in ways that may not be positive. One neighbor even said your son's glasses gave off a quirky image. That kind of image can be hard to unsee. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Karen," I said slowly, "they're glasses. He needs them to see the board at school." "I'm not saying he can't wear them," she replied, smiling the way snakes do. "But perhaps there's a more neutral style? Something less jarring. Or maybe he could wear contacts in the future. We just don't want the other children getting the wrong idea." "The wrong idea about what?" I asked, my voice calm but tight. "That it's okay to wear what helps you see." Karen straightened. "It's about maintaining harmony. The HOA has guidelines about front yard decor, about paint colors, about noise. Visual consistency is part of the community identity. We want everyone to feel comfortable." "Except my son," I said. She paused, as if that thought had never occurred to her, or worse had, and she didn't care. "I'm just here to pass along the sentiment," she said. "We all want what's best for the neighborhood." I didn't respond. I couldn't. My hands were clenched, my jaw tight. I watched as she stepped back out onto my porch and walked away without saying goodbye. That evening, Ethan was quieter than usual. He wore his glasses at dinner but kept tugging at the sides, trying to angle them so they wouldn't be as visible. He didn't finish his mac and cheese, his favorite. He didn't ask to watch cartoons. He just sat, then got up and went to his room. I followed him 10 minutes later and found him lying under the covers fully dressed, glasses on the nightstand. I sat at the edge of his bed. "Everything okay, buddy?" He shrugged. "Some kids said I looked like a bug today." That stung. They said I looked like a science freak with my big eyes and my big green glasses. I nodded slowly. "Did you tell the teacher?" "No. I didn't want to be a tattletale. And besides, they're kinda right. I do look weird." He didn't cry. Ethan rarely cries. But there was a quiet defeat in his voice that hit harder than any outburst. Like something small inside him was breaking, something that should have been allowed to grow. I reached over and picked up his glasses, turning them in my hand. "You know what I see when I look at these?" I asked. He looked at me, eyes wide. "I see a kid who's learning how to see the world clearly, who's brave enough to wear something different, and smart enough to ask questions the rest of us forget to ask." He stayed quiet. "And those kids at school? Or that lady who said something mean?" I continued. "They don't get to define what's weird. Not when weird just means different. And different doesn't mean bad." He nodded barely. I handed the glasses back. "You know how I see you when you wear these? I see a superhero who just got his first piece of gear." A tiny smile crept up. "I don't feel like a superhero." "You will," I said. "You just haven't seen your story yet." That night, when he went to sleep, the glasses were back on his nightstand. But something had changed in me. This wasn't just about a rude comment anymore. This was about the soul of our neighborhood. About the quiet cruelty that lives behind gated fences and manicured lawns, the kind that disguises itself as community standards but is really just fear of difference. And if Karen thought she could reduce my son to a visual inconsistency, she was about to learn that this inconsistency was about to be the face of her perfect little world. Because if my son's glasses made him look weird to her, then I was going to make sure the entire HOA saw that weirdness up close. Every week, on every porch, in every mailbox. Not to shame him, but to celebrate him. To remind everyone what real courage looks like, especially when it comes from a child. That night, after I left Ethan's room, I sat in the dark of the living room and just listened. The house was quiet. Too quiet. You know that kind of silence where something feels off, like the walls are holding their breath? That's what it was like. Every now and then, I'd hear a sniffle through the baby monitor still hooked up in Ethan's room, not because he needed it anymore, but because I liked the peace of mind. He wasn't sobbing. Just soft, steady sniffles, spaced out like someone trying really hard to be strong. He didn't want me to hear him cry. And that's what made it worse. There's something uniquely painful about seeing your child try to hide their hurt. Especially when it's not from a scraped knee or a lost toy, but from the slow erosion of confidence, brick by brick, word by word. Cruelty wrapped in politeness, in HOA legal smiles and neighborhood concerns. That night I didn't sleep. I just kept replaying the look on his face. The way he tugged at the sides of his glasses at dinner. The slump in his shoulders. The dullness in his voice when he called himself a bug. All of it. I thought back to when I was his age. How I got bullied for my stutter in 3rd grade. How the teacher tried to correct me by making me read out loud in front of the whole class every Friday. How the kids mimicked me behind my back until one day I stopped speaking altogether unless absolutely necessary. Took me years to find my voice again. And now it was Ethan's turn to shrink. No. I wasn't going to let that happen. I walked into my office. Just a small converted bedroom with a desk, a printer, and a filing cabinet full of tax records, Ethan's old drawings, and a million HOA newsletters that no one ever read. I picked one up and looked at it. Summer lawn reminders. Grass can't exceed 3 inches. Riveting stuff. That's when the idea sparked. What if I used the HOA's own system? What if I turned their platform, one that they used to shame and scold, into something that could lift Ethan up. I didn't want to humiliate anyone. This wasn't about revenge. It was about visibility. Literally. So I drafted a new community announcement. Simple design. Clean layout. Big bold headline at the top. Meet Ethan, the bravest kid on the block. Underneath, a photo of Ethan I'd taken the day he got his glasses. He was standing in the sun with his head tilted slightly upward, looking at the sky through those green frames, like he was seeing the stars for the first time. His hair was messy. His shirt was half tucked in. But his smile? It could have powered the whole street. Below the photo, I added this paragraph. Ethan is 8 years old. He loves science experiments, knock-knock jokes, and learning how the world works. He recently got his first pair of glasses, and we couldn't be prouder. In a world that sometimes teaches us to hide what makes us different, Ethan reminds us all to stand tall, see clearly, and wear our weirdness with pride. Be like Ethan. That was it. No digs at Karen. No rants. Just a celebration of my son in the very format this neighborhood used to tell people their trash bins were out too early. I printed 80 copies that night. Glossy paper. High resolution. I even added the HOA's standard community mailer header in the corner, just to make it blend in perfectly. And the next morning, I got up before sunrise. There's something peaceful about walking the neighborhood before anyone wakes up. The air is cooler. The birds are just starting their morning songs. The wind carries the smell of dew and cut grass. It's the only time this place doesn't feel fake. I slipped one flyer into each mailbox. Folded. Clean. No tape. No vandalism. Just a quiet message in the same format everyone had seen 100 times before. By 9 a.m., the phone started ringing. First it was Mrs. Timmons from 3 doors down, whose husband fought in Korea and whose grandson also wears glasses. She said the flyer made her cry and asked if she could get one signed by Ethan. Then it was Mr. Morales, the retired art teacher. He wanted to know if Ethan would be interested in painting a mural on the side of his shed, something bold like those green glasses. By noon, the neighborhood Facebook group was blowing up. Some people were confused, some were touched, and a few, predictably, were annoyed. Karen, of course, posted a long-winded comment. This type of unauthorized mailer does not represent the HOA and may constitute a misuse of community communications. While we respect all residents, we ask that personal matters not be circulated in official formats. She tried to be polite, but the tone was unmistakable. Still, it didn't matter, because by then, people had already started taping the flyer to their windows. Ethan saw one on our neighbor's porch on the way back from school. He stopped, stared, blinked behind his glasses, and smiled. "Why is my face on their window?" he asked. I crouched beside him. "Because you're brave." And people noticed. He didn't say anything right away. Just stared at it like he couldn't believe it was real. Then he reached up and adjusted his glasses, deliberately, proudly, and kept walking. That night, as I tucked him in, he asked me if he could wear his glasses to sleep. I told him no, unless he wanted them bent in half by morning. "Okay," he whispered, curling up with them beside his pillow. "But can I wear them forever?" "Yes," I said, brushing his hair back. "Forever." And for the first time in days, he fell asleep without a single sniffle. It's strange how fast something small can ripple through a tight-knit neighborhood. One week you're nobody, trimming your hedges and minding your mailbox height. The next, your son's face, with his green-rimmed glasses and soft smile, is on windows, doors, and bulletin boards like he's running for mayor of a better world. And the best part? It wasn't just me anymore. The morning after the flyers went out, I walked Ethan to the bus stop. He had his backpack on, hair still sticking up a bit in the back, those green glasses sliding down his nose like always. But today, something was different. People waved. Not just the half-hearted finger lift that neighbors usually give each other. Real waves. Warm. Genuinely kind. Mrs. Timmons from across the street gave Ethan a thumbs up from her porch and called out, "You're a star now, young man." Even grumpy old Mr. Beasley, who's lived here since the Reagan administration and hasn't spoken to anyone in a decade, gave Ethan a nod of respect. Ethan noticed. He looked up at me, confused. "Why are people being so nice?" I smiled. "Because they finally see what I see." He didn't say anything, but I could tell it meant something. His steps were lighter. His shoulders straighter. He stood at the bus stop without fidgeting or adjusting his frames like he was trying to hide them. Meanwhile, back at the house, things were heating up online. The HOA group chat, which I was admittedly banned from commenting in after that whole Halloween decoration incident, was lighting up with debate. Some members were upset about the use of HOA formatting for a personal message. Others were touched. And a few, like Karen, were absolutely fuming. Karen posted one of her long-winded diatribes with a perfectly filtered photo of her sipping coffee on her veranda. While we support all children in the community, we must uphold the standards of the HOA Communications Board. Using the official flyer format to promote personal messages sets a dangerous precedent. Today it's a child's picture. Tomorrow it's political rants, business ads, or who knows what else. I urge all residents to refrain from participating in this unauthorized messaging campaign. Naturally, that post had about 24 likes, but the real action happened in the comments, over 300 of them. Parents started sharing stories, pictures of their own kids who wore glasses, kids with hearing aid, kids with birthmarks. One woman, a few blocks down, shared how her daughter wore a back brace to school and used to cry every morning from bullying, until she saw Ethan's flyer and asked if she could have glasses too, to look brave like that boy. That post alone got more reactions than anything Karen had ever written. Still, I knew Karen wouldn't take this lightly. Sure enough, 2 days later I got a letter from the HOA. Not the usual kind printed on the thin white paper with the fake gold seal. This was hand-delivered. Certified mail. The kind that requires a signature, as if they were serving me a subpoena. I opened it right there on the porch. 3 full pages of legal-sounding nonsense, all of it condemning the use of unauthorized distribution of HOA-formatted materials and deliberate disruption of aesthetic standards and community cohesion. They tried to hit me with a $250 fine. I didn't pay it. Instead, I did what any self-respecting, slightly passive-aggressive father would do. I printed more flyers. This time, I added a quote from Ethan underneath his picture. "It's okay to look different. Glasses help me see stars. What helps you see?" I printed 100 more copies. And this time, I didn't just do mailboxes. I taped them to the community bulletin board by the tennis court, left stacks at the rec center, hung one in the clubhouse next to the rules about lawn flamingos. I even emailed a digital version to every parent I knew and told them they were welcome to print their own. Some did. A lot, actually. Ethan became something of a local legend overnight. It wasn't about the glasses anymore. It wasn't even about the HOA. It was about standing up for kids who've been told they were too different, too strange, or too weird. It was about dignity, visibility, love. And boy, Karen couldn't stand it. She tried to rally the other board members for an emergency vote to ban flyers not officially issued by the HOA. But it backfired spectacularly. One of the board members, an older gentleman named Peter with a grandson who wore cochlear implants, publicly resigned from the board mid-meeting. Said he refused to be part of a group that polices kindness. That moment? That was the crack in the dam. The next week, someone organized a Wear Your Weird day at the community park. Kids showed up in capes, colored socks, face paint, goggles, tiaras, you name it. Ethan wore his glasses and a big bright green t-shirt with a cartoon version of his face on it. Someone had made stickers with his quote, "Glasses help me see stars." He passed them out proudly. There were parents hugging, kids trading sticker packs. A mom cried while talking about how she never thought she'd see her child feel included in anything, let alone something that started with an HOA flyer. Karen showed up for exactly 3 minutes, scanned the crowd, and left without a word. It was the quietest I've ever seen her. That night, I sat with Ethan on the back porch, watching fireflies blink across the yard. He leaned his head on my arm. "Is this all because of my glasses?" he asked. I looked down at him. "Not just your glasses. It's because you were brave. You were proud of who you are. That's something a lot of people forget how to do." He was quiet for a moment, then whispered, "I'm glad I wore them anyway." "So am I, buddy. So am I." A month after Ethan got his glasses, and a month after Karen tried to erase his confidence with one cruel comment, something happened that sealed the whole story in a way I never could have scripted. We were invited to speak at the town's annual community dinner. Now, don't get me wrong, this wasn't some huge city gala. We live in a small town where the community dinner is usually just crockpots of chili, trays of brownies, and someone's uncle playing acoustic guitar in the corner. It's held in the same rec center gym where kids play dodgeball on Tuesdays and seniors do yoga on Thursdays. But this year was different. Apparently, the story of the boy with the green glasses had spread beyond our little HOA. Someone had posted about it on a parenting blog. Then a local news site picked it up. The flyer Ethan made? A teacher at the elementary school printed it out and hung it in every classroom. And now, the committee wanted to honor him. When we arrived that evening, the gym was buzzing. Paper lanterns hung from the basketball hoop. Long folding tables were set up end to end, covered with checkered tablecloths. There were little name cards, balloons, and at least 3 crockpots steaming away in a corner. But right in the center of the room, on a small makeshift stage, was a banner that said, "See the world like Ethan." Ethan's eyes lit up. We sat near the front. Everyone who passed us smiled at him. Some shook his hand. A little girl came up, wearing a pair of bright red toy glasses, and said, "I look brave too." Ethan beamed. Eventually, they called us up. A woman from the community board introduced Ethan like he was a keynote speaker at a national conference. She talked about how his story reminded people what neighborhoods were supposed to be about, not fences and fines and conformity, but kindness, inclusion, and standing up for one another. I was asked to say a few words, but I only said this. When my son put on his glasses, he didn't see himself as weird. He saw the world more clearly, and he smiled because of it. But someone tried to take that smile away. And all it took was a few cruel words. Words are powerful, but so is community. You all helped give that smile back. You reminded a little boy that being different isn't a flaw, it's a gift. And now he walks taller. Thank you for giving him a place where he can be proud of who he is. Ethan spoke too. Just one sentence. No script. Just from the heart. Thank you for helping me feel normal, even when people said I wasn't. And that was it. No standing ovation. No orchestra swells. Just quiet applause and a few tearful claps from the back. But it was enough. As we sat back down, an older woman I'd never met approached us. She wore a worn cardigan and walked with a cane. Her glasses were thick, bottle cap thick. She looked down at Ethan and said, "I was called Four Eyes for most of my life. They told me I looked strange. But I became a school librarian anyway. You're going to do amazing things, sweetheart." Ethan nodded, and I saw something change in him in that moment. He wasn't just proud. He was certain. In the weeks that followed, the unauthorized flyer incident was quietly dropped by the HOA. No fines. No formal letter. Karen had retreated into what I assume is her fortress of silence. I saw her once trimming her roses with a little more force than necessary, but she never made eye contact again. And honestly, that was fine by me. More interestingly, the HOA started allowing resident-submitted stories in their monthly newsletter. At first, it was cautious. A short piece about a family's dog rescue, a student winning a science award, but before long, it became something real. They started calling it Faces of the Neighborhood. And guess who was on the very first page of the very first edition? Ethan. This time, in full color, glasses on, holding a telescope he got for his birthday. The caption read, Ethan, 8 years old, future scientist, lover of stars, teaches us all to see clearly. You couldn't write a better ending. But here's the thing. This story isn't just about glasses, or an HOA gone too far, or a boy being teased. It's about the fragile, sacred courage it takes for a child to be themselves in a world that wants them to fit into boxes. It's about how fast adults forget the pain of being different and how casually some of them pass that pain on. It's about how one sentence, "He looks weird," can echo through a child's heart louder than we ever intend. And it's about how one parent's decision to fight back, not with anger but with visibility, can light up a whole community. I didn't write letters to the board or post angry rants online. I just put my son's face where people couldn't ignore it. I made his difference visible. And I didn't do it to provoke. I did it to protect. And the beautiful part? The town didn't flinch. They embraced him. They reminded me that even in neighborhoods full of strict rules and nosy committees, there are still people who get it. People who remember what it's like to be different. People who want their children and grandchildren to grow up in a world where weird is just another word for wonderful. Now, when Ethan walks to school, he walks with a bit of a swagger. He waves at the crossing guard. He holds the door for other kids. He doesn't touch his glasses anymore. Not once. And every time I see him look up at the sky through those green frames, I remember what he told me. Glasses help me see stars. What helps you? I still don't have an answer. But I do know this. I'm seeing the world more clearly now too. Because of him. Because of courage. Because of love.